Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our tonight's meeting of the SABR Elysian Fields chapter. We are based in northern New Jersey, but everybody is always welcome. SABR members, non-members, all over the world, all are welcome. We are in for a big treat tonight. I had the pleasure of meeting tonight's guest last summer at SABR 52 in Minneapolis. She took the convention by storm, impressing with her poster presentation and passion for baseball. Bailey Hall, a high school senior in Austin, Texas, celebrates her love of baseball in many ways. She's grown up a huge fan, naming the Astros and the Cubs as her favorite teams. Hall manages her high school varsity baseball team, has worked for her local minor league team, the Texas Rangers AAA affiliate Round Rock Express, and is a member of the SABR Rogers Hornsby chapter. She's also interested in baseball analytics. Welcome, Bailey.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to talk to you guys tonight, especially because I have a lot of friends here, but one in particular is my friend Annika, who she is a freshman at NYU, and she's also kind of in the same boat as me, just as excited about baseball. And I'm really excited that she came today. So yeah,
Awesome.
I'm excited.
Welcome, Annika.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Go for it, Bailey.
So, in Bailey's family, a leadoff walk was considered sacrilege, perhaps the most agonizing start to an inning. Inspired by all she was learning from SABR about statistical research, Hall decided to take matters into her own hands and determine if her family's feelings were justified. And so, her presentation, Which is Worse, a leadoff walk or a leadoff single, was born. Through her research, Bailey was taken on a secondary journey, addressing how to intertwine baseball research with the larger concept of baseball ethics and where statistics belong in the sport, as a catalyst for learning and improvement rather than an apparatus to do jobs for us. Bailey's presentation deservedly won the 2024 SABR Convention Poster Presentation Award, up against some stiff competition from far more experienced researchers and presenters. Now sit back and enjoy as Bailey teaches us which is worse, a leadoff walk or a leadoff single.
Okay, I'm just gonna share my screen really quick. And everyone let me know if this works for you guys. Does this look good for everyone? Let me know.
Hold on one sec.
Give it 1 sec to load.
Yep.
There we go.
We are good.
We're good? Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Yeah, I don't really know how to follow that introduction. Donna was very, very kind in her retelling of what happened at the convention last year. So just a little recap. My name is Bailey Hall. I'm a senior, a high school senior in Austin, Texas, and I'm a huge baseball fan. My whole family is, as I'm sure we all are here. And today I want to share with you guys one of the most remarkable stories of my life, events of my life, you might say. And as most amazing things do, it all started one day sitting on the couch with my dad watching a baseball game. So, this is my statistical analysis of leadoff walks versus leadoff singles and which is worse. So, me personally, I can't think of a baseball game without thinking about the statistics and the numbers and analytics and all the things that are kind of behind the game that we love. I mean, baseball isn't just a sport, it's a pastime intertwined with all the numbers, right? And I think one quote really stands out that kind of encapsulates this. And it's by John M. Culkin, who was a reporter and a critic for the New York Times in the 1970s. And he illustrates this dichotomy perfectly by saying, baseball couldn't survive without all the statistical appurtenances involved in calculating pitching, hitting, and fielding percentages. Some people could do without the game as long as they got the box scores. And I mean, I so agree with this. I think the stats are everything in baseball. It's the most fun thing about it is that after a game, we get to sit there and analyze all the box scores and see what happened and really dive into it, right? And I mean, stats has had a long history of being part of baseball. However, I'm also an advocate of not allowing statistics to overshadow the game. And I think that's a big issue that stands in baseball's future at the moment. But instead, we need to figure out how stats can enhance the human ability and can help to make it more fun for viewers to watch and make the players better, right? So we're all baseball purists here, and statistics can seem a dangerous part of the new version of baseball. Having statistics and analytics replace the intuition and wisdom of coaches, managers, players, and viewers seems like a horrible idea, right? But as we continue to read about stats from the game we know and love so dearly, especially as opening day is upon us, I am reminded of why we, as baseball nerds, love the numbers in the first place. So, my tenuous relationship with statistics has always brought me back to one conclusion. The numbers allow us to keep talking about it after the game, in the off season, before the game starts, whenever we want, right? All day, every day, we can talk about baseball. We can argue about why the Yankees always win and why the Cubs always lose, why the Dodgers always win, all these things, right? And I think the reason that we're so scared of statistics taking over the game itself is because we really don't know how they're found. We know what they look like on a screen, and we know how to watch a baseball game. We're all really good at that. But we don't really know how to get from beginning to end. Very rarely are we ever staring at raw data in front of us, right? We're looking at cherry-picked data specifically geared towards the exact question that we just asked. And I think that's an important thing to note. We don't know how to get from point A to point B. And for me, what I needed to know to figure out the true place of statistics in baseball was to derive the statistics myself. I needed to see what statisticians and analysts were doing to find the numbers. I know how to watch a baseball game, we all do, but I wanted to be able to derive the statistics myself. So I continued to marinate with the idea of my own analytics project in the midst of the end of the 2023 season and the postseason, which, as an Astros fan, was particularly stressful. Luckily, my other favorite team, the Cubs, never really causes me any stress in the postseason because they can't seem to make it. But once the Astros were out of the postseason, I had a little more time on my hands, right? But before that, I was listening to my dad every single night on the couch scream at the TV, and one thing in particular really made him upset. The reason for his outbursts were leadoff walks. If there is one thing that my dad cannot stand, it is the dreaded leadoff walk. And I mean, this is not a new point of contention, right? The leadoff walk has been this tumultuous thing for as long as we can remember. The baseball world hates the leadoff walk. And now I and all of us here can agree that a leadoff walk is not ideal, but I never understood why it was so horrible. Why my parents, my grandparents, my friends, everyone believed a leadoff walk to be the pinnacle of all evil. When you're pitching to, oh, sorry. Oops, got a little ahead. Sorry. When you're pitching to, Aaron Judge, isn't it better to give off a leadoff walk rather than a leadoff home run? But regardless, everyone continued to emphasize why the leadoff walk is the most dreaded thing ever. And I even reached out to the two coolest people I know, Larry Durker and Keith Hernandez. Hopefully there's some Mets fans out there for Keith Hernandez. And I wanted to see if they held this same opinion. Aside from like fangirling over the fact that they even answered my emails when I asked them this question, they both agreed. They both said that a leadoff walk is like the worst way to start an inning, and it is much worse than a leadoff single. Magnitudes worse. And I mean, they both obviously know that it results with a runner on first with no outs, but they both said that it shakes the pitcher, unlike a leadoff single. So, okay, the two actual players that I know also agreed with my family. A leadoff walk is worse. But my question was, does the data actually support this? Is it actually statistically worse to give up a leadoff walk rather than a leadoff single? Well, after the 2023 ALCS, when as an Astros fan, I unfortunately had a lot more time on my hands, I realized that I had the perfect solution to both of my previously mentioned problems. If I could figure out a way to do a statistical analysis of scoring totals from innings starting with a leadoff walk versus a leadoff single, I could not only prove to myself that I can derive statistics myself, but I also had the possibility of proving my dad wrong, which I thought would be pretty cool. So now that I had the idea, I knew I could put it into action because how hard can that be, right? Wrong. Very, very, very wrong. At least for me, because let me list all of my statistical experience thus far. No, that's it. I have no experience. This is my first time trying to do any sort of project relating to this. And I mean, honestly, I had made it a point up until a few years ago to never look at anything analytics related because that's what my parents do. And I didn't want to do what my parents did, right? That's horrible. But then I realized that, if it has to do with baseball, I can learn to love it. And so I decided to start my own project, see what would happen. So step one was to map out what data I would need to even begin an analysis. At its most basic level, I would need the total of leadoff walks from the 2008 to the 2023 season, the total of leadoff singles from the 2008 to the 2023 season, and their respective box scores to get the answer. And the reason that the data is from 2008 to 2023 is because there was a change in technology in 2008. So there isn't data available prior to 2008 to see leadoff walks and leadoff singles. Ideally, I would go back into the whole history of all of baseball, but unfortunately, there's just not data for that. So I did what I thought would be the right thing to do. And I just typed into Google what I was looking for, and I was hoping to get a nice big data set staring back at me. Unfortunately, that is not what happened. It was way more difficult to find this data, but with the help of a lot of my fellow SABR members and my parents as well, I was able to find the data in two gigantic data sets, which were far from organized, and I had no idea where to start. The only background knowledge I had was a little bit from my high school statistics class, but that doesn't teach you how to get from point A to point B. So the moral of the story is that I was very lost at this point, and it was turning out to be a lot more difficult and involved than I had suspected. I first began trying to look at one data set from StatCast and manually look up every respective box score, which quickly became tedious. So yeah, I tried many different paths of how to figure out how to work with this data. And it took hours of data manipulation and tons of help to finally figure out what I was looking for. This was definitely no small feat. It took me months, but I was finally presented with an answer to my question: which is worse, a leadoff walk or a leadoff single? Remembering that everyone who I'd ever talked to determined that a leadoff walk was the worst way to start, or was worse than a leadoff single, this is what I found. There is almost no statistical difference at all. But before I dive too deep into that, I want to talk about statistical significance. For a discrepancy in data to be considered statistically significant, it's generally accepted that there should be about a 5% difference between one number and the other for it to be considered a statistically significant piece of data. So now, if that seems insignificant to you, 5% doesn't seem that much, I want to give you a little bit of context. A 5% difference in batting average is the difference between a 285 batting average and a 300 batting average. A 5% difference in ERA is the difference between a 4.0 and a 3.8. So in a game like baseball, 5% certainly can make a difference, and clearly does, right? So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's look at our answer. The average runs scored in an inning, starting with a leadoff walk from the 2008 to the 2023 season, was 0.94 runs, whereas the average runs scored in an inning off of a leadoff single from 2008 to 2023 was 0.93 runs. So as we can see, practically no difference at all. So I'd finally done it. I had confidently proven my dad and Keith Hernandez and all these cool people, I'd proven them wrong, right? There isn't actually a statistical difference. But then I realized that we'd only really found the bigger picture statistic, when in fact, there's so much more that you can derive from one analysis. When we looked further into the data, I filtered by inning, and I found something very interesting. So this is a chart of leadoff walks and leadoff singles scoring outcomes inning by inning. So the red lines are leadoff walks and the white ones are leadoff singles. And there's some really cool stuff when you look deeper into this chart. So specifically, in the ninth inning, the time when a leadoff walk is arguably the most unwanted, there's about a 5% difference in the outcome of a leadoff walk and a leadoff single. And a leadoff single is far worse. A leadoff walk or a leadoff single also occurs about 4 times in a game. So a 5% difference can really make a big one. And you can also see, which I think is kind of cool, the influence of the ghost runner, right? Which was implemented in 2020. So if you look at the extra innings, you can see how much worse leadoff singles are than leadoff walks. Overall, it's about an 11% difference. But I want to talk a little bit more about the ninth inning. So if you filter the data and look only at the top 5 closers from the 2008 to the 2023 season based on number of saves, the average run scored off of a leadoff walk is about 0.6 versus runs scored off of a leadoff single, which is about 0.34. And I want everyone to look at that. I mean, that's a huge difference, right? That's almost a 50% difference. And it shows that, in fact, for good pitchers, a leadoff walk is far deadlier. If you look at the average for all closers, the average run scored off of a leadoff walk and a leadoff single is 0.75 and 0.83 respectively. So that's a huge difference for the good closers versus closers on average. Again, for good closers, the old fable isn't true. Leadoff walks it is true for good closers. Leadoff walks are way worse than leadoff singles. And if you look at the top 3 pitching teams in the league overall, based on lowest ERA from the 2008 to the 2023 seasons, which, as you can see, were the 2022 Dodgers, the 2022 Astros, and the 2015 Cardinals, leadoff singles are way worse. Leadoff singles score on average 0.71 runs in an inning versus leadoff walks, which score 0.59 runs in an inning. So that's kind of interesting. That's the opposite of what it is when you look at the closers, right? Or when you look at good closers. Furthermore, the opposite statistic, aka looking at the bottom 3 pitching teams in the league, those being the 2021 Orioles, the 2023 Rockies, and the 2020 Tigers, leadoff singles are way better, with 1.21 runs scored off of a leadoff single versus 1.32 runs scored off of a leadoff walk. So first of all, I just want to look at the actual scoring total, right? So for good teams, the scoring totals are way lower, right? Versus for bad teams, you can see the scoring totals are way higher. And the statistics are flipped. Leadoff walks are way worse for the bottom pitching teams in the league. So again, in our high stress scenarios in the postseason, a leadoff walk might actually be what you're looking for, because ideally the good teams are in the postseason. And in fact, the teams with the highest pitching or the highest records, pitching a leadoff single is maybe what we should be watching out for. Luckily for me, as a Cubs fan, I do not need to worry about leadoff singles because my team never makes it to the playoffs. But now let's look at some starters. The top 5 starters from the 2008 to the 2023 season, based on lowest ERA, are Kershaw, DeGrom, Sale, Scherzer, and Cole, unsurprisingly. And for them, leadoff walks are far worse, with leadoff walks scoring 0.78 runs on average and leadoff singles scoring 0.69 runs on average. So for starters, you should be watching out for leadoff walks. Interestingly, again, this is the opposite of what it is for closers. And I'm not sure why this is, so if anybody has any good ideas, let me know. But I think this is the beauty of an analysis like this. You guys can help me figure it out, and we'll have lots of things to talk about afterwards to try and figure out why these discrepancies might be true. And the last comparisons that I decided to look at were some local ones. So I know I have at least one Yankees fan. I hope I have a few more Yankees fans out there. For the Yankees, it's almost equal, with a slight favor towards leadoff singles being worse and leadoff walks being better. So Donna, when you're there opening day, maybe you should see if this is true, see if you can tell if this seems accurate. And I also looked at the Mets as well, and for them, it's exactly equal. Leadoff singles and leadoff walks score on average the same amount of runs in an inning. And if for some reason I didn't talk about your favorite pitcher or your favorite team or something, please let me know. I have the data with me on my computer, so I can look it up really quick if you're wondering about your favorite team to look out for this season. So as you can see, there are a million different ways to look at this data. And the moral of the story here is that when I first thought of my question, which is worse, a leadoff walk or a leadoff single, I thought the answer would be one simple statistic. But clearly that's not true. From just one analysis, I got so much information and there was so much more to dive into. And I think this is the real place that statistics have in baseball. I mean, it's not even opening day, right? And I have been working on this project all of the off season. I've had so much to talk about when there's no baseball playing, but I still can spend hours and hours thinking and talking about baseball statistics. And to me, this is the exact spot that statistics hold in baseball. it gives us something to look forward to and to talk more about and just to keep the game going, keep the game we love going, right? And so again, I think there's a lot that you can draw from this. Number one being, I think it's good for all of us to know how statistics are actually derived and see how difficult it is to get from point A to point B. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something today, and I hope that we can all prove our dads wrong one day or another, because it was a pretty good day when I got to run downstairs and be like, "Look, Dad, like I did the analysis and it's actually the opposite of what you thought." Um, but I think, I'm reminded of possibly my favorite baseball quote of all time from Bull Durham after I did this project. And I'm sure we've all seen that movie and there's millions of good quotes, but this one felt poignant. The only church that truly feeds the soul day in and day out is the Church of Baseball. And I just think that's so true. The great American pastime has made its name on the backs of numbers and analytics and statistics, not because numbers drive the game, but because they allow us to do this, to sit here and talk more about it and discuss it and just totally nerd out with each other. So yeah, if y'all have any questions or any comments or anything like that, please let me know. And I'm so happy that I got to talk to you guys today.
Bailey, thank you so much for that. If anybody's got a question for Bailey, please head down to the bottom of your screen, hit that react button and raise your hand. I know that there are some Mets fans here, and I'm sure a few of them were like, "Whoa, Keith Hernandez is your friend?" So I have to know, how did that relationship develop?
So my uncle, well, actually my great uncle, is a writer, and he has written about tons of different things, one of which being sports. So he wrote two books for Keith Hernandez. He wrote the Cal Ripken Jr. book, or he's a ghostwriter, so he helped write all of those books. And he became really good friends with Keith while he was writing the books. And so now he's, I would say, a family friend. I think we like fangirl every time he's around. So I don't know if he thinks it's weird, but I certainly think he's very cool. So yeah, that's how we know Keith Hernandez.
Very cool. So there's lots of different baseball ties in your family, which is part of the reason why. I mean, you can tell how passionate you are about the game in every way. So it as we get all these little nuggets, it all makes so much more sense. So I'm gonna stop talking and I'm gonna turn it over to Craig.
Hello. Great job, Bailey. I was just reminded with your opening statements about how baseball could be enjoyed with statistics or without statistics. There's a Bill James thought experiment where he was saying if we could watch baseball and not know the statistics, who would we think are the best players? And we might have different opinions as to who the best players are. And I was wondering, since you're the manager of your baseball team, you probably do a lot of the stats. Do you appreciate the players differently knowing the stats than you did when you were just watching as a fan and not knowing? Because I coached my daughter's softball teams, and when they were, 8, 9, and 10, we didn't really keep accurate stats, and we just kind of went by who was the best athlete and who looked to hit the ball hard. And then when you're actually keeping a book and doing game changer and all that stuff, and you can see, well, this girl who doesn't look like she can hit the ball is actually our leading hitter.
Yeah.
So it's just the same thing, the way you can enjoy baseball with stats and without stats. I thought that was a great point.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely feel like, well, I also think if you guys do not go to your local college, high school, like not Major League Baseball games, I highly encourage that you do, because I think it's definitely a different game to watch. It's in a lot of ways more interesting. And so I think that's already a cool thing to see. And I definitely notice that sitting in the dugout taking stats, often the players who maybe don't look the most athletic or aren't the biggest or aren't the strongest are really useful and are actually some of our best players. I mean, on our team, our leadoff hitter is a freshman who I think is like maybe 5'2", 5'3", and he's one of the most amazing players I've ever seen. And I think a lot of scouts and coaches might overlook that, but if you look at the statistics, his on-base percentage is like insane. I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's like the highest you've ever seen ever. So yeah, I definitely think taking statistics really helps you value undervalued players, you know? So yeah.
Ken Edwards, your turn.
Hey, Bailey, thank you. This was incredibly insightful. My question is, have you spoken to the connections that you have at the highest level of baseball, those that you referenced at the start, for example, to ask them why the elite closers statistically may be different from the general population with respect to the impact of a leadoff single versus a leadoff walk? Why would that be the inverse of the rest? Do they have any theories on it? Thank
Yes.
you.
So I did not ask Larry Durker, but I did ask Keith Hernandez. And again, we don't know if this is true. This is just his speculation. But he was saying that for the good closers, they're there to get strikeouts or just to get outs quickly, right? And so a leadoff single could be one good pitch, they just made contact, now they're on base. Versus a leadoff walk means you had to have multiple things go wrong in a row, which is not the mindset that most good closers are in, because ideally they're there for 3 outs and then they're gone, right? Versus the earlier pitcher, the starters, which are they're there for the long game, right? So it's a different mental tactic, I guess, which makes leadoff walks a little bit less harmful. That was what he was saying, and I feel like that makes sense. So maybe we just stick with what Keith Hernandez was saying. Yeah, that's what he said.
Excellent.
I,
Thank you so much.
right, 90% of the game is half mental, right? Says Yogi, right?
Mhm.
I do think that the mental has a lot to do with it. Of course, I've never stood on a pitching mound during a game or closed a game, but it just seems, like living in New York, we can all talk about the idea that certain players are built to play in New York and other players aren't. I think the same holds true for every single position on the field. Some people would never last an inning, right, as a catcher or as a closer or whatever the case may be. So I say Keith is right. I've got a question in the comments here from Patrick Holsey. He says, great presentation, Bailey. I may have noted the closer's slide incorrectly. Was it 0.6 runs allowed for a single versus 0.34 for a walk?
It was 0.6 for leadoff walks, and here I'll just reshare the slide real quick. And
Okay,
point
cool.
0.3. Let me just reshare it just so y'all get a good view. Um, Hold on. Let's see, hopefully that loads. Yes, okay. So the top closers, which is based on number of saves, are Rivera, Kimbrel, Rodriguez, Wagner, Percival, not surprising. And 0.6 runs on average were scored off of innings starting with the leadoff walk, and 0.34 for leadoff singles. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Of course.
Any follow-up on that, Patrick?
Do you think it changes with the COVID rules where especially in extra innings where there's a runner on second base, it goes for on second base, where the single may drive the runner in, as opposed to the walk not driving the runner in?
Do I think in the 9th inning it makes a difference, or
In extra innings, so 10th, 11th, 12th.
yes, in extra innings, the ghost runner is very apparent. If you look at only from 2008 to 2019, it's practically even. It's almost exactly even, which is mostly what it is for the innings prior. But after the 2020 and on, I think it's like almost like a 20, I think it's like a 28% difference, something like that. So on average, if you look at it from 2008 to 2023, it looks like leadoff walks are 11% better in extra innings than leadoff singles. Yeah, so it definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Dan Sichalski,
Hello.
how you doing?
Good. Bailey, thank you. Very interesting. And Keith Hernandez is awesome. That is true. Indisputable. Did you tell him that he's wrong?
So good question, because I was really scared because it's Keith Hernandez, and like I didn't want to be like, oh, by the way, remember when I asked you that question? Like maybe you're actually wrong. So luckily he followed up on it and he emailed me and he was like, oh, hey, like did you ever figure that out? And so I very nicely was like, yes, I did figure it out. Unfortunately, you may have been incorrect, but you're still really cool. That was basically what I said. And my uncle
Nice.
said that he liked that I told him that he was wrong because he said he doesn't hear that very often. So, yes.
Very nice. Very nice.
Mhm.
Rock Hoffman, your turn.
Hey, Bailey, great job. You ever driven Keith Hernandez to the airport? Um, Seinfeld joke. And I'm glad you brought up going to college games. I was at a college game today, a Division III game between Penn State Abington and Rowan, and the Penn State Abington pitcher, he walked 5 batters. 3 of them were the leadoff batters in innings. In the sixth, he pitched into the 6th inning. Of the 5 walks, 4 of them scored, including all 3 leadoff walks came around to score. He didn't give any leadoff. Well, he did give up a leadoff home run to lead off the game. So that guy scored too. So I just thought that paralleled really great with what you were talking about. Great presentation.
Thank
And
you.
and one thing, I think why your dad feels like, and you touched on it a little bit, that walks are worse is because it seems like the pitcher made the mistake
Right.
to allow the guy to get on base, as opposed to if a hitter, a great hitter goes out and gets, or any hitter goes out and gets a hit, they did
Right.
something to do it. Whereas walks don't seem to be earned. But the reverse, if you think about it, is really true because, a great batter can work a walk, and a great pitcher can throw a meatball up there that gets hit. So
Right.
it's a great presentation.
I think 3 points. Number 1, I did watch the Seinfeld episode. I was very confused. I was not getting a lot of the references. I watched it with my parents and they were like pausing it every 2 minutes to explain what was going on. But yes, so I did watch that one Seinfeld episode. Number 2, I think that is why it is so amazing to go to college games, high school games. You see the most insane things that you would literally never see in a major league game. Like the other day, I was at my high school game and there was our pitcher threw a wild pitch. The catcher's chasing after it to go get it. And it somehow turns into a triple play for us to end the innings. The bases were loaded and we got a triple play on a wild pitch. And I was like, you would never, ever, ever see that in Major League. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's super fun to go to some of the lower levels because you see just cool, crazy things like that, which clearly you experienced as well. Third thing, I forgot my third thing. What were we just talking about? I don't know. I'm sure it was a good point. But yeah, I agree. I think going to lower level games are just really an experience, and I think everybody should do it if they have the chance.
Interestingly, we had an event, an in-person event on Sunday, and the venue was the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center, and it overlooks Yogi Berra Stadium. And there was a college game going on at the time that unfortunately I did not get to take in any of, but they had a good flow of people going. And I know Dan and some others checked it out a little bit of it. And I wish I had known because I would have promoted it. Hey, come early and hang out and watch a little of the game before coming in. Those who arrived early ended up doing that by default. But yeah, I agree that, I mean, look, you give 99% of us any opportunity to watch baseball, and we're not going to say no.
Right.
Uh,
I agree.
Eric White's
Wait,
got something. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
I
Billy.
did remember my third thing. My third thing was I'm excited to see what you were saying about walks feel like it's more like it was the pitcher's fault. I am interested to see because obviously there's like the type of pitcher who's like just more around the edges, right? He's not really strikeout pitcher. He's more of a, get the
With
right calls at
finesse.
the right time. Yeah. I'm interested to see if these numbers are going to change if/when they implement the automated ball strike system, because at the AAA level, they do it half the time basically, and the other half they do the challenge system. And it is interesting because I feel like I can definitely see certain pitchers do better or Thursday to Saturday when they use the challenge system versus Monday to Wednesday when they use the automated ball strike system. So in a few years when that's implemented, I'm excited to see what might change.
And then you can come back and you can give us a follow-up.
Yes, I would love
Yes.
to.
Awesome. So Eric White asks, do you have a favorite historic leadoff walk or single that spelled disaster? We usually remember the ribby, not the key leadoff reach.
That is a really good question, and I'm really mad that I don't have one that I am like really upset about. I feel like if my dad were here, he would have one, but I don't have one off the top of my head.
Okay,
Hopefully
well,
everybody else does. I'm hoping
if
somebody else has a good
Yeah,
one.
I do.
if you think of one, shoot me an email and I will share it with everybody.
Okay.
Eric, do you have a follow-up to that? Do you have one? No. Okay. Greg Caleri, I hope I said that right.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I was going to ask a different question. Good presentation, Bailey. Yes,
Thank you.
I do have a historic leadoff walk that spelled disaster. Being a Red Sox fan and a Red Sox season ticket holder, one stands out plain as day, historical. The ninth inning of Game 4 of the 2004 American League Championship Series between the Yankees and the Red Sox, Bill Mueller got a base hit. The Red Sox were down 3-0 in that series. They were down a run in the ninth inning in that game, and he got a base hit. And I don't think if anybody is a baseball historian, I don't think they have to think too much beyond what happened after Bill Mueller got to first base in that game and what happened the rest of the ALCS and the World Series. Disaster for the Yankees, but not for me, not for us. We tasted champagne. But the comment I wanted, another thought that I had is leadoff walk, a closer giving off a leadoff walk. I think a lot of it would it result in disaster? A lot of it would depend on who got the leadoff walk, because if you're facing a power hitter and you've got a 3-run lead, you're going to pitch around people. Whereas if you're facing 7, 8, 9 in the bottom of the lineup, the other extreme, you've got a 3 or 3-run leads. You're facing the 7, 8, 9 in the lineup. You don't care. You're just going to attack the strike zone. So I don't know if there's been any thought given to that goes beyond the statistical analysis, excellent statistical analysis. But anyway, that's all. I thought I'd contribute that because that historic leadoff single was very important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. My hopeful next step with this project is to figure out if there's any correlation between the batter and the outcome of the at-bat. So like, is it like what you were saying? Is a leadoff walk good if you're pitching to this person, or is it really worse if you're pitching to this type of hitter, and like that kind of thing? So I'm trying to figure out how to find the data for the batter aspect of leadoff walk versus leadoff single, which is a little difficult. So if anybody has any suggestions, please let me know. If y'all have good data sites or something like that that might have data sets like that, that would be really helpful. So yeah.
Before we get to Jeff, I want to just make a pitch for something. Bailey, you just said about if anybody has any suggestions. Bailey and Annika, both of you, keep this in mind. We are kicking off at the end of May. I believe May 28th is the date. We're going to be doing something that I'm calling a researcher series. No big fancy name, but the idea is to allow people to learn from each other and share ideas and get help from SABR members as well as industry experts. So our first series, like I said, is the first episode of the series, we'll call it that, is with Adam Zarowski from Baseball Reference and StatHead. He's going to be here, and he's going to do a bit of what service they provide, do a bunch of Q&A. That'll all be recorded, and then we're going to turn off the cameras and just let people throw out ideas about, hey, I want to do this project. Do you think it's an appealing project? Do you have any ideas of how you might be able to help me with this project, or what services might be there? And we're going to continue that with people like Cassidy Lent from the Baseball Hall. And there's a gentleman who is from a local library who's going to talk about how to make the most of the resources available at your local libraries and college libraries and things like that. So I think you guys could both benefit a lot from that, and we'll talk about it more offline. But it's not just for people like Bailey and Annika who are getting started. It's for all of us. So I hope everybody will come back for that, and I will stop talking about that and go to Jeff.
Oh, sorry, I wanted, sorry, I
Oh.
don't mean to interrupt, but because
No.
it's related to what Bailey was just asking, I would also think that, if you're walking the leadoff or the number 9 hitter to start the inning is going to be much worse than walking like the 5 or 6 hitter based on
Right.
who's coming up after.
Right.
And the other thing was, have you tried Baseball Savant for data?
Yes, periodically. I need to like go back and because I check Baseball Savant pretty frequently for like lots of things. I'm not sure if I've checked there for that specifically though. So I will look at Baseball Savant. And also, what was the date, Donna, of the
May
May
28th.
28th?
I'll
Okay.
email you guys after. It's May 28th, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, I'm gonna write down Baseball Savant and May 28th.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
Belly, great presentation. Really enjoyed it. But my real question shifts from statistics to communication. You have an in with someone who can, rather than you explaining to us, as you say, baseball nerds, what the situation is, you have an in to have someone explain to the world what you've found. And that's Keith Hernandez. Have you thought of approaching Keith Hernandez with the immensely interesting facts that you've developed, to have him use that in a conversation that he could so easily have in his baseball announcing situations, and to bring up at the right time something that you found which is so intriguing?
Yes, I have. I don't want to overwhelm him, or not overwhelm him, but I don't want to pressure him into doing anything. But I know that my uncle definitely has been like, "Oh, you should say this, you should do that." And I think if he were to do that, that would be amazing. But I also think SABR has a lot of opportunities to meet cool people and have it shared that way as well. So I don't want to only look to Keith Hernandez, but I have been like, oh, by the way, like you should mention that. Like that would be cool.
It would be one of the coolest things ever.
Yes,
You mentioning what you're mentioning to the rest of us is cool enough. I mean, it's great. But the idea of someone like Keith Hernandez, who has been, I think, convinced by what you've done, or
I
at
hope
least intrigued enough to ask you, hey, what was the answer to that question
Yeah.
that we talked about? I just think it's a super cool next step that could happen, not in a pressured way, but in a very natural way. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for bringing it up, and all the best in the next steps on your projects.
Thank you.
So if anybody's listening to a Mets broadcast and they hear Bailey's name, make sure that you get word back to Bailey that it happened. I think, are you familiar with Katie Sharp, Bailey?
No.
She's a statistician that gets mentioned a lot on the Yankees broadcast. Dan, you know Katie, right? No?
No,
Okay.
I actually don't.
Oh, okay. But she's got she throws out a lot of oddball stats on social media, and she gets referenced often. I don't remember what her position is now. I read something the other day and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that that's where she is now. But look her up. I think that you and she could would hit it off really well.
Okay, I will look her up. I'll add it to my list of
Okay,
notes.
cool. Rock, back to you.
I just wanted to quickly point out another leadoff. In this case, was a walk in a pretty famous situation. The last game of the 1993 World Series, I think it was Greg pointed out that it worked out well for his team. The Red Sox, my team, not so much, as Mitch Williams walked Ricky Henderson to lead off the ninth inning. He ultimately would come around to score on the 3-run home run by Joe Carter to win the 1993 World Series for the Blue Jays.
That's another good one.
Yeah. Well, not for me. I was a Phillies fan. I am a Phillies fan.
It's a good example.
It is a famous, yes, it is a great famous
Yes,
example,
yeah.
but not a great memory.
Mm.
Ken?
Yeah, just a follow-up statistical study idea. The statistical anomaly that you identified as a result of the zombie runner being introduced, which caused a significant change in 10th inning and 11th inning data. Do you see the opportunity to also study in the 10th and 11th innings only whether there's a statistically significant difference in the number of runs scored between a leadoff walk versus an out occurring with the
Like
first
a
batter?
leadoff out? Okay.
Because the leadoff walk would fill first base, create a force at every base. So there could be, in theory, a statistical advantage to that, a strategic advantage to that for a team. It would be interesting to see whether or not a leadoff walk in the 10th or 11th innings is actually worse than an out occurring with the leadoff batter in the 10th and 11th innings.
That
Just an
is
idea.
a really interesting question that I have not heard. That is a really interesting question. And I know that on Baseball Savant, you can filter the data so that you can do lead off out, like first at bat is an out. So if I go to Baseball Savant, I might be able to figure that out and get back to you on that, possibly.
That
So
would be
yes,
great.
that's a cool
I'd
question.
love that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
of course.
Bailey, just keep in mind, you have an open invitation. Anytime you want to come back, you know how to use the SABR directory and get to Ken directly. But when you get to the next level of this presentation, whatever path that takes, you want to come back and you want to give us a part 2, you are more than welcome. If you start something else from scratch and you want an audience for it, you've got an open invitation to always be back here with us.
Thank you. That's very
You're
nice.
welcome. You're welcome. And let me just playing for multiple runs in top of extra innings, playing for 1 in the bottom of extras if still tied. I'm just looking in the comments. Okay, if nobody else has anything, I am going to say thank you again, Bailey. This was absolutely wonderful. I am amazed by your talent and your passion. And you are the future of not just SABR, but of baseball. And I look forward to what's next. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us tonight. If you're not on our mailing list, please add SABR to your list of groups. If you have any questions about anything that came up tonight, please feel free to reach out to me. And I think I forgot to say this at the beginning. I'm Donna Muscarella, President, SABR Elysian Fields. Have a great night, everybody.